This is Beyond a Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Gary Smith.
Gary, how are you? I'm still down south. I hopefully will be back Sunday to do it in the same jurisdiction as you. But I will tell you, never fails. My favorite story of the week, even though we're going to get to a bunch of others. Can you guess which one?
I would imagine it's the gavel swinger, so to speak, which I'll go ahead and.
Wow! Did you come up with that, or was that New York Post?
No, that was New York Post. That was the headline here. I'll go ahead and I'll share the image. It's a wild story about a Bronx mother who claims that she was hit up on a threesome app by the judge who was overseeing her child custody case. It is. I mean, it's just. You can't stop reading it because it's just there's nuggets every time I reread it.
It really is one of the most salacious, obviously it's a judge. It's a judge who is presiding over this woman's court case. The woman, at least if you believe the article, and who knows where the truth is on this, but it's quite something. The woman, by the way, did I read it right, has been married 9 times?
I'm going to quote the article, which says she claims to have been married 9 times.
Okay.
And I just got to say, I mean, for my reading, if that's her claim, who has the time? I can't imagine. It took years off my life to get married once. I don't get it.
Wow. And so can you get into the facts here? Because, this is, I'm not saying that you know about these apps, but I think you probably have a lot more exposure than I do.
Yeah, I certainly have never really experienced them myself, but apparently there are apps out there. I've heard of one called Thrinder, which is, of course, a play off Tinder that people will go on who are looking for, multiple partners and are looking for, multiple experiences. And apparently this woman claims that while she was in the proceedings for her child custody case, she was hit up by a woman who had a boyfriend or another partner. I don't know what their marital status is. And she was solicited for a threesome, and it turned out that she recognized her, and it was the judge presiding over the case. So she is saying that while she was in the process of going through this case with apparently a week to go before the next hearing, the judge hit her up and said good morning and was trying to elicit a threesome with her. So yeah, it's a wild case. It's just hard to believe.
So if I understand correctly, at least from the article, and maybe I'll reach out if there's a lawyer involved. So the judge apparently is on this app, and it's called 3P or something?
I think it's called 3Fun, if my memory serves. But yeah, it's...
Okay, yeah, so maybe they'll want to sponsor the episode next week.
Sure.
And so the judge reaches out to this woman who turns out to be a litigant in this judge's court, looking for a threesome and describing that she likes thick girls and guys who are on the well-endowed side.
Correct.
Okay. I mean, we could, and gavel swinger, whoever the headline person is at New York Post, shout out. And apparently the litigant, what's her name? 9-time married, self-proclaimed 9-time married.
Yeah, her name is Sydney Sutherland, but on the app, she went by Cynthia. So that maybe is why the judge, didn't necessarily put it together.
And so apparently this app has some way to, I guess Cynthia 9 times, don't call me Sydney, says, hey, you know who I am, and has a court appearance in the next week. The judge then allegedly shuts down the request, but not before the woman, the litigant, Cynthia, call me Cynthia, not Sydney, 9 times, screenshots it. Is that what happened?
Correct. And to quote the article again, we're questioning maybe the source, but all we can do is report what we've read. The judge reached out and said, good morning. How are you? And the litigant replied, bitch, you know who the fuck I am. And then she screenshotted it, and then she put it on social media. And then she put it on social media. And I actually have a video that was posted to various social media apps. It's very short here, but we'll go ahead and play it. So that is apparently part of her profile, with a picture of her and a picture of her partner that she, uses as a way of soliciting these interactions. So it's the litigant was able to screenshot it quickly. The judge, alleged judge, did shut down her profile and block the litigant, and is obviously shut off all communication. But it's been reported.
And apparently there was a court order where the judge recused herself.
She did. She recused herself in a quick virtual conference. It has apparently been reported to various ethical bodies that govern her court, and there's an investigation ongoing. But God, you can't write this. I mean, aside from Gavel Swinger, I wouldn't be able to write this script if I tried. People would just laugh at you and say it's unbelievable.
Well, speaking of apps and threesomes and recusal, let's segue into Fani Willis, because there was a filing this week, correct?
There was. It was a long and it involved filing. I believe it was over 100 pages. And she basically made all kinds of claims that although she did admit the affair, the relationship. Correct. Sorry, my mistake. She did call it a relationship. She basically admitted that the relationship took place and argued that by no means did it have any impact on her prosecution of the case, and that the relationship between her and a prosecutor does not disqualify anything and should not be an instance that should disqualify anyone. My favorite quote out of it was, quote, "This is not an example of zealous advocacy, nor is it a good faith effort to develop a record of a disputed legal issue. It is a ticket to the circus."
And by the way, that's a good argument. I've heard a lot of prosecutors say this. You're just trying to. But did you notice that the prosecution here, the Fani Willis team, embedded a picture of Ashley Merchant into the filing itself?
Yeah, they embedded this picture that I have here that I'll share. This is a picture of Ashley.
If you're going to argue that it's a ticket to the circus, and if you're going to argue that you're just trying to create a media kind of blowout here, and that it has no legal import or justification, I understand that. I get that that's what you would do. I mean, it's not unusual for prosecutors to do that when they're, to quote Merchant, their hand has been caught in a cookie jar. But when you embed a picture like this, it kind of tells me that that you're throwing the mud right back.
And you're talking about the picture of Ashley Merchant, who is campaigning and supporting Nathan Wade earlier in 2016.
2016, when he unsuccessfully ran for judge.
Correct. So
here's
this picture.
Here's the lawyer who filed the motion, and this was embedded in the prosecution's opposition.
Right.
Which, if you can't see this, it's booty shorts. I think, can you still call these booty shorts?
They may be a little longer than Daisy Dukes, but they are certainly on the short side for the style, the fashion styling of the 2016 era.
And it's Ashley Merchant, purportedly the lawyer who filed this on behalf of her client, who's been charged, Mr. Roman, and she's wearing a shirt that has emblazoned across the front of it Wade,
and the back. Yeah, it's clearly a Wade campaign shirt, and she is the caption is "Vote Nathan J. Wade," enjoying Greek music while getting the word out. And they also embedded several other social media posts.
For all of you, Helena, I always tell that joke, Gary, about that my grandfather, it's actually Kimmy on the Square, came through Ellis Island. and the name was Garagosian. He dropped the IAN because he wanted to become a good American. And now everybody thinks I'm Greek and I get invitations to Hellenic bar associations. And here you've got Ashley Merchant at apparently a Hellenic festival.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the Marietta Greek Festival is what it says there in the location that she tagged. So, yeah.
So now if you're going to seize the moral high ground like the prosecution does here, I find it a little beyond the pale to insert or embed in your motion a 8-year-old, it's 8 years old, right?
Yes.
8-year-old picture of the lawyer who filed the motion wearing booty shorts with Wade's name emblazoned across her chest to argue that, see, Ashley Merchant supported Wade. That was 8 years ago. Did she know what was going to happen and that Fani was going to charge her client and that there was going to be a, at least from her standpoint, shenanigans involved in the appointing a special prosecutor and a divorce that showed up? By the way, the day before Wade was supposed to testify this week in the divorce case, guess what happened?
He settled it. And I'm sure to his benefit.
I'm going to make a wild bet, Gary. Wild bet. I had mentioned last week my father always called the family law cases a battle of the perjuries. I'm going to bet that this guy paid more than he ever thought he would before this motion was filed.
Oh, how dare you? How dare you? No way. No, you think that he might have paid out so that he didn't have to sit for a deposition that might become public? Oh, how cynical of you, Mark. That's ludicrous.
And then compounding matters. So he settles the matter on the eve, literally the eve of his deposition. Then in this motion, you know what else he asks for? Because the judge, when he ordered the special counsel here, who has been paid and now subpoenaed and is now in the crosshairs of both the arguably the county audit committee, the judge here, he not only was he ordered to reply by February 2nd, and they did. They waited, like they probably getting advised by a PR person, wait until late Friday to drop this thing, even though the order, they didn't file it first thing in the morning. They waited, hoping that it would go away over the weekend. Yeah,
the take out the trash idea, we dump all the bad news Friday afternoon when no one's paying attention. Sure.
As if the admission that there was a relationship. And by the way, it's scurrilous. When you read it, it is not forensically relevant, this, that, or the other. But the height of chutzpah here, from my standpoint, is that they want the judge to vacate the hearing on February 15th, day after Valentine's Day. We also mentioned that because there's no there. And we're going to file declarations, which is what the prosecution did. And you're supposed to just accept the declarations at face value that say, no, there wasn't a relationship before 2022, that when he was hired, there was no relationship, by the declarations, and you don't get to cross-examine them, and you don't get to have a hearing, and you don't get to argue with the judge about the significance of this. I don't know who advised them to go down that road, but I will tell you, if this judge, and I don't think he will, I'll be very surprised, if he vacates the hearing and just denies this, I just can't imagine that he would, because as was mentioned, what ended up happening is Merchant, Ashley in her booty shorts, by the way, I hate embracing that and perpetuating that, but she obviously wears them well. And what she did is, as soon as they filed it, rapid fire succession, she responded and says, where do you get off thinking you can just ask for the hearing to be vacated without me cross-examining the witnesses who were declaring under penalty of perjury. I think she was the one who said something to the effect, this isn't a civil case where you're pushing around other people's money. This is a criminal case where liberty is at stake.
Yeah. Absolutely. And she was very right to do that. And she obviously has been waiting for this and was well prepared. So it's, it's absurd. I completely agree with you. I don't see an instance where this judge will vacate the February 15th hearing, and we will definitely be watching very closely to see what happens there.
Right. And remember, as we discussed last week, in the divorce case, the judge had pressed pause on the subpoena for Fani Willis to allow Wade to testify first to see whether or not there was any unique knowledge that she had that Wade couldn't deliver, which is why Wade settled, because the last thing he needs is to put Fani Willis on the stand and have her testify. McAfee, I think, probably, if I were him and the judge presiding over this, that, they're right about one thing. It will be a circus, but by the way, rightfully so. This is not going to end just because you take a hearing off calendar and act like, oh, it's okay. I declared under penalty of perjury that it didn't happen. Ashley Merchant says she's got something to I believe she submitted a receipt in part of her reply to their opposition that she had a hotel receipt where there was one single king bed in the room, and that predates when supposedly this relationship took place. Now, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I find that to be kind of an interesting fact. You're going to vacate the hearing without letting her cross-examine as to that and to the representations, and to say, and by the way, I'm not so sure that even if the declaration is true that the relationship didn't start until after he was hired. I don't know how that helps you. I don't know how that helps the fact, obviously, he didn't seek an indictment until after he was hired, correct? Yeah. So how in the world do you think that helps matters? And this idea that roughly the monies were split when they went on vacation, if there's a tracing that is done of when the money goes into Wade's account, and by the way, this is not far-fetched. This is done all the time. The last trial that I did with a tracing is exactly what they did. The IRS agent takes it and takes a look at the money, makes some suppositions. They always say money is fungible in the sense that if the money comes in and then it's paid out shortly thereafter, even if they're splitting it, if his half comes from the funds that were just deposited in his account, that doesn't solve the problem. It certainly doesn't solve the problem of the appearance of conflict, that when he was hired, even if they weren't engaged in a relationship, they subsequently become engaged in a relationship, and that predates the indictment. How does that help?
It doesn't. And I know we're short on time today, Mark, but I do want to point out that this is, while this is the case that we're certainly very focused on and have been for several weeks, we've also got the news that Judge Chutkan has decided to throw out for the time being, the Trump case on the election subversion. And that is also
throw out the trial date.
The trial date, correct, for the time being. And she's
vacated the trial date. By the way, if you've been listening, we've said this for weeks, if not months, for all of those who are waiting breathlessly, because I've read at least 10 articles this week that say they got to get a conviction because that's the only way that they can peel off independent voters and some Republican voters from Trump, that many of the exit polls are saying that if he's convicted, that will flip the script on what the polling is showing. The problem with that, and I'll say before, E. Jean Carroll's $83 million verdict, at least so far, has not dented the Republicans. The fact now that you're going to hear arguments this coming week on on several of the issues surrounding these cases. Number one, the immunity argument, and number two, remember, there's also supposedly a report that's going to be issued by a Trump appointee on the classified documents regarding Biden, which I can't imagine that the lawyers down in Florida aren't going to use as a baseball bat against the Office of Special Counsel. They will ask for all kinds of discovery because they're going to do a selective prosecution motion. They're going to talk about all kinds of invidious discrimination. That is going to slow walk that case down in Florida, the classified documents case, down to it will never get tried prior to November. The Georgia case doesn't even have a trial date. They were asking for an August date. Given everything that's happening there, good luck trying to get that to trial before November. You've got now, as we have talked about, you've got the January 6th case that just got vacated, that trial date. I can't imagine how that case, because you've got not only a separate case where two of the four counts that Trump is charged with, which are counts that were under the Sabonis-Oxley Act, which in a separate case, the SCOTUS has taken on that. So those two counts are at issue on a separate case, not counting the 14th Amendment case and the case about presidential immunity. So I don't see how this J6 case comes about. All you're left with at this point, if you're somebody who wants to see Trump convicted, because mind you, the E. Jean Carroll case is not a conviction, it's a civil judgment, and that's apparently had very little effect except on his pocketbook, is you're back down to a case in the state court in New York brought by Alvin Bragg on the hush money payment. And, in my humble opinion, and I think, some knowledge on this case, that's, to my mind, the toughest case for them to bring of all of them. Although it was, mind you, it was the first case that was brought.
And I would also say it's probably the case that is the least consequential in the minds of many voters. I mean, it's I don't from what I've heard opined about in the political sphere, it's a case where, people can somewhat relate to, and it's not necessarily a case that is as consequential as some of the other criminal cases that, as you outlined, are all somewhat on pause at the moment.
Yeah. And like I said, the other three that, as you characterize, and I think accurately, are the consequential J6 classified documents in the RICO, those three cases, two federal and a state. To my mind, and I'll bet you, although I could be wrong, that the polling that they're looking at is not focused on the hush money case, but is focused on either J6, RICO, or classified documents. If there is a special counsel report that comes out that gives them anything on to argue the selective prosecution, like I've said, that case is never. I mean, I wish you could bet on trial dates. You know what I mean? Because you could give me great odds, and I would be willing to bet $1 that case will never go before November. And I don't see how the J6 case does as well. I think both of those have been derailed. Georgia's been derailed. So it really comes down to Alvin Bragg and to echo or mimic you, Gary. I just don't think that moves the needle for most people. At least the people that they're talking about, that they are worried about.
Yeah. Mark, I got to let you go. You've given us more time than I think you had today. Real quickly, I wanted to shout out a comment that you sent me that people are frustrated that it's tough.
Yes, our winner. By the way, we have a winner also, don't we?
Yes, I believe we do. Let me see here. I believe it's
the winner. Because the winner, I'll give him credit. He appealed to my Armo pride and called himself a self-proclaimed Odar and the Clean Plate Club. He's a winner in my mind. It was a good
D Hoovy 13 on YouTube, and I will say to him and to everyone else, there have been complaints that it is tough to get in touch with me because I've been telling people to shout me out on Twitter and send me their address. We're gonna go ahead and pivot to that. X, whatever. I refuse to call it X. And Elon's a whole nother topic that we might have to get into in the coming weeks.
I believe, Brett, who does our research for us, pointed out something that I didn't see. Elon lost his pay package of $55 billion, and Brett pointed out that the lawyers who successfully derailed that in the Delaware proceeding, and I don't know who was representing Elon in that proceeding, but that the lawyers who derailed it are now going to have a claim for not just millions, but potentially billions as a percentage of what they've saved shareholders. That's quite a reverse contingency.
So Brett has reached out. It was Bernstein, Litowitz, Berger, and Grossman who represented him. And yeah, Brett points out that they are allowed to theoretically request 1/3 of the value saved for stockholders. So, obviously
they represented the shareholders.
Right. And they're allegedly.
Right. So I want to know who represented him. I want to see what they're going to say in terms of Alex Spiro has been his at Quinn has been his go-to lawyer, but I haven't seen any comment from them or any reporting done that it was him. So I don't know who represented him in this matter. But boy, what a when I say a reverse contingency, what I mean by that is generally a contingency lawyer. You only get paid if you collect. But here, this is the reverse of that, which is there was going to be a payment of $55 billion. That's now been, at least at the trial court level, vacated. I'm sure it'll get appealed. And so they're going to say the value to stockholders is immense, as it obviously is, if it holds up, and that they should get a percentage of that. That's a reverse contingency, which is quite a claim.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see. Okay, and to the point of the sweatshirts and people who are trying to get in touch with us, if you have been selected as a comment winner, the sweatshirts are going to start being mailed out this week. Email me, Reasonable Doubt Podcast 1942, which is a nod to Mark's favorite spirit there. Reasonable Doubt. I'm sorry, it's not Reasonable Doubt Podcast. Reasonable Doubt 1942 at gmail.com. Reasonable Doubt 1942 at gmail.com. Email me, include the comment that was selected as the winner, and send me a picture of your logged in YouTube account so that we can, get any fraudsters off the case there. And I will start sending those out this week. Mark, I was strong armed by a member of our staff who saw me walk into an office wearing this sweatshirt, and she demanded one of them. I will let you guess who it was. So you may see someone walking around in a Reasonable Doubt podcast in the building. But this was not someone who I intended to say no to. There's a sister vibe going on there, and I was not going to argue with her when she demanded a sweatshirt. So shout out to Alice, who's probably going to be bouncing around the building in one of these sweatshirts. So the rest of them are all going out to fans.
We're trying to keep a close universe here.
Well, she was not going to take no for an answer, and I was not going to fight with her. So that's the one that went out, but the rest are going to fans. And email me, reasonabledoubt1942 at gmail.com. Send me all the info, and they'll start being mailed out this week. So look forward to that. Mike Nilsson and the gentleman in the UK who have already given me their info. You don't have to email me, but the rest of you email us, and we'll get your swag out very shortly.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks for the time today, and thanks for being flexible.
Thanks, Mark. You as well, and safe travels if and when you do ever return, so that I can see your smiling face in Los Angeles. Be well.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Reasonable Doubt. Subscribe on YouTube at youtube.com/Reasonable Doubt Podcast.